human breathing. I flinched back and let out a sharp Jesus without even meaning to. And then, I'm not kidding about this, I heard the most guttural and angry scream I've ever heard ring out from somewhere inside the wall. It caught me so off guard that I yelled out again, a feeling of existential dread hitting me right in the face. I grabbed Jordan by the arm and yanked him out of the room. We ran down the hall to get my younger son, Scott, who was still sound asleep. I didn't even give him a chance to open his eyes. I just scooped him up in my arms and ran. I needed to get back upstairs to the deck where my wife was. That was the only other thing on my mind at that point. As we reached the base of the stairs, I yelled for her, and then I heard another scream come from somewhere behind me, much closer this time. I turned around and saw a man covered in filth charging down the hallway straight at us. I nearly tripped trying to get up the stairs with both my sons, but we made it upstairs and onto the deck just in time. Not 2 seconds after I slammed the sliding door shut, the guy hit the glass full force. I genuinely thought it would shatter. He started clawing at the door like an animal, shrieking and pounding, all the while yelling things I can't bring myself to repeat. I threw my body against the door and yelled at my wife to grab the kids and call the police. She grabbed them and covered their ears, pulling them back from the scene. I kept my eyes on his, trying to block the view of him from my family. He was wild, completely unhinged. His hands smeared something. Dirt, blood, I don't even know. He smeared it across the glass as he banged and tried to force the door open. I don't know how long I held it shut. A minute, 5, it felt like forever. He seemingly had unlimited energy, because it took all my strength to keep that door shut, and he didn't let up once. All I could think about was protecting my family. I was fully prepared to fight the guy if the glass broke, but before that happened, the police finally showed up. They must have come around the side, because within seconds, I saw 2 officers inside the house running at the guy who was still banging on the door. One of the officers tackled him from behind, and the other one helped restrain him. The rest of the night was a blur. After getting that guy out of my house and in the back of a police car, the officers asked me for my version of things, which I told them. Together, the 3 of us inspected the house to try and assess how that man had been inside the walls and how he had gotten out so quickly. Turns out, the house has a crawl space I didn't know about. There's an entrance underneath the back porch that you wouldn't know was there unless you were looking. From there, it leads into a standing crawl space that runs alongside the foundation and has a second access point through a loose panel in Jordan's closet. I had no idea it was there. I'd never done a full inspection of the house when I'd inherited it. Hell, I didn't even bother refinishing it. A few days later, I got more information from a detective who called to follow up. He told me the perpetrator admitted that he'd been staying in the crawl space for months, that he had discovered the crawl space entrance during the off-season, and was planning to harm my family that night for intruding on his, quote, new home. Apparently, the guy had been stealing food from both our house, which we somehow didn't notice, and our neighbors' trash bins. We didn't go back for the rest of the summer, not out of fear of something else happening, but out of trauma. I didn't want to bring my wife or kids back there for a while, and they didn't object. I hired a crew to seal off the crawl space completely, and once that was done, I was finally able to relax a little. We've been using the house again this summer, and I'm glad to say that things are back to normal, or at least as close to it as we're gonna get. I grew up in a kind of rural area where you could ride your bike for miles without seeing another person. Like a lot of people, my favorite season was always summer. It still is, actually, but it's been a while since I lived out in the country, so summer's lost a little bit of its charm. A lot of what made summer so special to me is tied to life in the middle of nowhere. There was something about the warmth, quiet, and emptiness I loved, something I could never find in the city. It's hard to explain, but I just felt so isolated, but in a good way. Like I had my own little corner of the earth, all to myself. Like I could disappear for hours and no one would know. Summer nights were always the best. The darkness added to the feeling of privacy and freedom that the little girl I used to be craved. I was 16 at the time. I had a friend back then named Taylor. She was a little more reckless than me, always pushing the limits in small ways. One random night in July, we decided to go stargazing. Just us, 2 bikes, and a bottle of wine. It wasn't the first time we had done something like this. Actually, it's something we did quite often. That is, until what I'm about to tell you happens. Come to think of it, this was probably one of the last times we went stargazing together. We didn't have a specific plan, just a direction. We wanted to go somewhere new, since the old spots were getting a little repetitive. Taylor said she knew a good spot past the edge of town, some abandoned stretch of farmland where nobody ever would bother us. It was sometime around 10 o'clock when we left. I'm not sure how long we biked, maybe 20 minutes, maybe 30, but we didn't stop until we were past anything even remotely civilized. At some point, Taylor just stopped her bike abruptly and told me we were here. I wasn't really sure what here meant, since there were no descriptive landmarks around, but it still felt perfect. Wide open field, no buildings, no fences, no cows, just a huge patch of grass and the endless starry sky. We spread out a blanket and popped the cork with the little opener Taylor had somehow remembered to bring. It was some cheap red wine that didn't taste all that good, but it did the job. We laid there for a while, passing the bottle back and forth, pointing out the few constellations we remembered by name. Our goal on nights like this was always the same: try and spot a shooting star. At one point, Taylor asked me if I thought we'd actually see one, and I told her probably not, but to keep looking anyway. They're not as uncommon out in the country where you can see so many stars, but you still have to pay attention. Shooting star or not though, we were having a great night. The wine was definitely doing its job, and I started feeling myself slipping into drunkenness. It was the kind of night that made you feel like time didn't exist, kind of like what I was talking about earlier. This isn't super relevant to the story, but it's one of the few things I remember about the night, so I'm going to quickly tell you anyway. There was a very brief moment that felt like a blip in the rhythm of the night. We were leaning back, and Taylor looked at me in this way that made me wonder if she wanted something more than friendship. Growing up, I always had that suspicion about her, but it was never motivated by anything more than curiosity. But that night, it felt a little stronger than I could recall it ever being. I didn't ask, didn't say anything. That kind of thing just wasn't talked about openly where we grew up. And besides, maybe I was just tipsy and reading too into things. Either way, it passed. We laughed about something dumb she said, and then looked up just in time to catch a shooting star streak across the sky. If anyone has ever seen a shooting star, they know the uncontrollable reaction it elicits. Like, you just can't help but laugh or shout something out into the night. The two of us giggled. Taylor told me to make a wish. I don't remember what it was, probably something silly. We leaned back and talked for a few more minutes, our moods a little uplifted from seeing the shooting star. I closed my eyes for a moment, not to fall asleep, just to feel the breeze on my face for a second and settle further into the stillness. I swear on my life, my eyes were not closed for more than 5 seconds. But when I opened them, Taylor was gone. Like, gone. Not just off to pee or fiddling with her phone. She was actually gone, which I could tell from the fact that both she and her bike were nowhere in sight, even though mine was still sitting right next to the blanket. I sat up fast, thinking maybe she was messing with me, but even after turning a full 360, I couldn't see her. In that moment, I felt this unexplainable feeling of fear wash over me. The empty field I was sitting in suddenly felt suffocating, and the gentle charm of the night was replaced by panic. The stars looked dimmer, that's the part I can't forget. The sky was still there, but it felt off, like someone had turned the brightness down or smeared something over it. And the air felt colder too. Not like it had cooled naturally, but like I stepped into a different version of the same place. I know I'm not making any sense, but like I said, the feeling was unexplainable. I pulled out my phone to check the time. It was 3 a.m. exactly. That timestamp is burned into my memory, and probably will be forever. I had to blink a few times to make sure my mind wasn't playing tricks on me. It hadn't even been midnight just a few minutes ago. I kept staring at the time on my phone, wondering if I had somehow fallen asleep. I knew I hadn't, but I couldn't be sure. Would Taylor really leave me there all alone though, even if I had fallen asleep? There was no way. She wouldn't have done that in a million years. I stood up, spun around, and called her name a bunch of times, but she didn't answer. I didn't know what to think. The only logical explanation was that she had ditched me for some reason. Maybe she'd gotten annoyed or wandered off and left me passed out, but I couldn't figure out why. We hadn't argued, and the vibe had been good, really good, honestly. I called her phone a bunch of times too, but those were unanswered as well. After that, I started crying. I mean, can you really blame me? I didn't know what else to do. I grabbed my bike and started pedaling back towards my house, trying not to panic. That ride felt like it took forever. It was probably the scariest I'd ever felt on the bike. I didn't stop until I made it back to my driveway, completely out of breath and still not understanding what had just happened. I went to sleep immediately. The next day, I texted Taylor first thing in the morning, expecting an apology or at least an explanation, but instead, she demanded one from me. She asked me word for word, "Where the hell did you go last night?" I told her what I remembered, how I'd woken up alone at 3 a.m. and assumed she'd left me, but then she hit me with the thing that made me send the story in. She said she was the one who had woken up alone at 3 a.m., and I was the one who was gone. She waited for me for over an hour, then biked home angry and confused, assuming I'd gotten annoyed and left her there. According to her, I just vanished, and I was just as convinced the same thing happened in reverse. We went in circles for a bit, trying to piece it together, but nothing added up. Neither of us had memory gaps beyond that moment. Neither of us had texts or calls or anything that could help reconstruct what actually happened. Even though both of us swore remembering calling each other after waking up, none of those missed calls were in either of our phone logs. Eventually, we dropped it. Or at least, we stopped talking about it. But I think both of us were far more terrified than we wanted to admit. I know I was. For months, I'd find myself lying in bed, looking out my window at the stars and remembering that night. Taylor and I didn't stargaze much after that night. Maybe once or twice. In a sense, things did go back to normal. We continued living our lives, and that was that. But even now, I still have no explanation for anything that happened that night. I wouldn't call myself superstitious or a believer in the paranormal, but everyone I tell this story to immediately attribute it to something unnatural. And maybe they're right, but I really don't like thinking about that. I do consider the possibility that she simply lied to me. Either way, I get a really unsettled feeling, like something happened to us that night that I'll potentially never figure out for as long as I live. I haven't heard from Taylor for years, but I'd bet my life on the fact that she too still wonders from time to time about what happened to us that summer night in the field.